is Fendi, and I am a naturalist for the City of Aurora's Open Space and Natural Resources Division. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I am happy that you've joined me to learn about plant life and some of their functions during this Discovering Aurora's True Nature virtual series. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know that there are some pre-video questions I would like for you to answer. You should have received these questions from your teacher or maybe your parents. If you haven't, they are in the description box below. Please pause the video, answer the questions, discuss them, and then resume the video. Today, we are going to be learning about plants and the parts that make them. At the end, we'll have some post-video questions and some fun activities for you to do at home. Plants are made up of several different parts, just like our bodies, and each part has a unique function. But before we get started, what are the 4 things that plants need to grow? The 4 things that plants need to grow are soil. So this is my soil. They need water. They need some sunlight. And they need CO2, or carbon dioxide. Here is my carbon dioxide. And, of course, we need a seed, because that is where the plant is going to grow from. So here's our seed. Now the seed has everything that it needs. It has soil, which has nutrients in it for the seed. It's got water, CO2, and sunlight. So now that our seed has everything it needs to grow, one of the first things that it's going to produce is some roots. So the roots are used for absorbing nutrients from the soil, such as phosphorus and nitrogen, and it absorbs the water from the soil. It also acts as an anchor for the plant, so keeping it in place and helping it to not get torn up by the wind or by any other disturbance. Next, the plant produces a stem. And the stem acts as a stability structure. And it's also where the flowers and the leaves come off of. But first, on this stem, we will have what's called a meristem. And a meristem is where growth takes place. It has some stem cells in it that allow the plant to keep growing. So if you were to cut this meristem off, the plant would no longer grow. And all plants have meristems. Some of them are located on the top of the plant, some on the bottom, some on the side, but all plants have them because this is the spot that allows for new growth to occur. The next thing that the plant is going to produce are the leaves. And leaves come in all shapes and sizes, textures, and arrangement. There's lots of variability in plants and their structures, which include the leaves. So the leaves are where the majority of photosynthesis takes place. Who can tell me what photosynthesis is? Photosynthesis is the process that plants use to create energy for themselves in the form of sugars from their essential ingredients. So from sunlight, CO2, water, and nutrients from the soil. So they combine those things and then they make sugars. And they use these sugars as food or as energy. And that food gets transferred to us when we eat these plants and to other animals that eat the plants. So, along the plant, we have something called stomata. And stomata are kind of like the pores that we have all over our bodies. So they're little openings. They open and close. And plants have these little openings so that they can absorb CO2 from the atmosphere, and so they can expel oxygen. So when they want to absorb CO2, they open up their stomata, the CO2 comes inside, and then they use it during photosynthesis. And then, when they want to release oxygen, the stomata opens again, and they release the oxygen. Once the plant is healthy and thriving, it will produce a flower, which is the plant's reproductive structure. So now we'll have a flower. And flowers have a few different parts. They have petals. Not all flowers have petals, but a lot of them do. And petals are used to attract pollinators. So they come in all kinds of beautiful colors, and flowers are really fragrant, so they smell really good. And that attracts insects and other pollinators to come visit the flower. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a second. And then flowers have what's called a pistil. This is the pistil. And the pistil is the female part of the flower. It's where the seed is made. And then we have the stamens. And the stamens are the male part of the flower, and they're the ones that produce the pollen. So in the springtime, when a lot of us get allergies, it's mostly from pollen. So these flowers are producing this pollen, and the pollen goes to another flower and it helps create a new seed. And the pollen is moved around by wind, so it gets in the air and then we breathe it and it makes our throats irritated and then we get some allergies. So here we have our pollinator. So this is a little butterfly. And the butterfly comes and visits the flower because it is eating the flower's nectar. The flower produces nectar, which is a sugary substance that the butterfly really likes to eat and needs to eat. And then in exchange, this pollen gets on the butterfly while it's feeding. And then the butterfly flies away, and then it has the pollen on it, and then it visits the next flower. And we're going to act like this is a different flower. So it visits the next flower, and then the pollen gets inside of the pistil. And when the pollen reaches the inside, it creates a seed. So here is our new seed. So now, this flower is going to produce a lot more seeds. Most flowers produce several seeds. And then once the growing season is over, when we get into the fall, the flower is going to die off, and then we are just left with the seed. And then the seed is dispersed, so it's moved to a new location. And seeds can be dispersed in several different ways. A couple of them are by the wind, so it can blow to a different location, or it can be moved by an animal. So then the seed finds a nice spot in the soil. It starts to absorb water and CO2 and sunlight, and then the whole process starts all over again. Plants are incredibly important for us, and we would not be able to survive without them. We use them for several different reasons. One of the biggest ones being as a source of food. So everyone eats plants. And if you don't, you really should be. Plants also feed the animals that we eat. So if you said that you didn't eat plants, you kind of do. Because the animals that you're eating, like cows and chickens and pork, are all eating plants. So plants give them the energy that they made from the sun, and then the nutrients of the soil, and the water, and the CO2, and then that energy gets transferred to us. And then when we die, or the animals die, or other plants die, all of that energy and those nutrients get reabsorbed into the soil. Plants also produce the oxygen that we need to breathe. And they absorb the CO2 that is in our atmosphere. We produce a lot of CO2 through pollution by driving around and within our factories and other things. So plants absorb all this CO2, and it's called carbon sequestration. So when they absorb the CO2, they put it inside of their structure. And they're taking it out of the atmosphere. And then producing the oxygen that we need to survive. Plants are also part of our planet's water cycle. So they absorb the water that falls as precipitation, so falls as rain or snow. And then they release the water into the atmosphere in a process called transpiration. And they release that water and it goes back up into the atmosphere, creating clouds, and then that water falls as rain or snow somewhere else on the planet, on land or in the ocean. And then the process starts again where that water evaporates into the sky and then falls onto the soil, and then the plants absorb the water again. So they're important in the water cycle. Plants also give us all kinds of medicinal products. So human beings have been around on this planet for a very long time, and we have only been using medicines in the form of pharmaceuticals, so in pills, for less than 200 years. So before that, humans were using plants for all kinds of medicinal purposes. And a lot of the pharmaceuticals that are made today have some components that come directly from plants. So they are very important to us in the sense that they provide us with a lot of medicine. Plants also provide us with building materials. So our houses and our infrastructure has a lot of material that is derived from plants, such as wood from trees. In your house is mostly made out of plants. So we would not be here without plants. Thank you for joining me, Naturalist Fendi, on this nature video journey. And as you explore our open spaces here in Aurora, or your backyard or schoolyards, remember that plants do far more for us than just look pretty. Your next task is to complete the post-video questions. After you complete the questions, you should send them to your teachers for credit, or you can send them to us, the Naturalist team. We would love to hear from you. Our email addresses are located in the description box below if you would like to send us a message or send us the answers to your questions for review. We are so grateful that you decided to join us here today to learn about plants and some of their functions. We look forward to seeing you in another video or in person at one of our nature centers sometime soon. Thank you.